everybody, I'm Steph Koza, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to tell you guys some very exciting news. I'm writing a book! If you follow me on social media, I'm sure you know all about this because I talk about it a lot. But I participated in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. It happens every year in the month of November, and the goal is to write 50,000 words before the end of the month, and I did it this year and I completed it. I wrote 50,000 words. It was amazing. It was such a cool feeling. But now that NaNoWriMo is over, I have this book that I haven't finished because I wrote 50,000 words, but I didn't actually get to like the end of the plot. So now I'm working on finishing my book. I've written a lot more since then. It's definitely coming close to an end, but I'm not quite there yet. But I wanted to kind of tell you guys about it. I'm very excited about it. And I'm also going to answer some of your questions about my book and the book writing process and anything that you want to know. So I asked you guys on Instagram and Twitter for your questions, and I got some great questions, so I'm going to go through them and I'm going to answer all of them right now. Question number one. What is your book about? My book is a young adult fantasy novel, and it is about two twins, a boy and a girl. They are 16. I'm not sure. To be honest, I've changed their age so much that I don't even know how old they are. And I'm just gonna figure it out when I'm done writing it. But these twins get invited to a very prestigious internship because they are very, very smart. And it's in this top secret government facility. They do a lot of research, a lot of stuff that no one else in the world knows about, and also a lot of very sketchy things. And one night the twins decide to investigate, and they sneak around the facility and they find this room full of 7 doors, and each door leads to a different fantasy world. This was very much inspired by every fantasy book or movie I've ever watched. I just wanted to create something cool like that, so I did. The room is kind of similar to that like forest in Nightmare Before Christmas when Jack finds all the trees with the doors that lead to different holidays, but instead of holidays, they're just like magical worlds. And each world is very, very different. They're all kind of like different genres, I guess you could say. Like one is full of witches and wizards, and one is full of mermaids and sea creatures, and it's like every door has a completely different reality. That's all I'm gonna tell you. You're just gonna have to read it if you want to figure out more. How much do you plan before writing? When I started this, I had an outline. I've had my characters figured out. I had the worlds figured out. I had like a general knowledge of what was going to happen. But now that I'm pretty deep into the writing process, I will admit a lot of things have happened that I didn't plan on. A lot of things have just kind of taken over. And that's something that's really cool about writing, is that you'll get so into it that at some point, you kind of don't even feel like you're in control anymore. It's like the characters have taken control, and this is what they're doing, and this is what's happening, and you just, as the writer, are just like, all right, here's where we're going now. It's very exciting and cool, and I really like it. If you have an idea for a story or character, how do you make sure it wasn't already done in another book? I feel like that's not something you should ever truly worry about, because at this point, pretty much everything has been done in some way or another. There are general archetypes that people use for characters and for places and for plots even. Like, you can knock out all the fluff of everything and narrow it down to a very basic, bare bones structure, and almost everything is gonna sound like everything else. What makes a difference is the details, the specifications, the combination of characters and places and plots and things, and that's what makes it different from everything else. And most people won't even pick up on it if you think it's similar to something else. So I try to just not even think about it. But obviously, like, don't copy someone else's story. Don't do that. Please don't do that. How do you deal with writer's block? I was taught in college when I was studying writing that writer's block is a myth, which it kind of is. It's sort of this thing that people try to fall back on. Like, if you're a writer and you can't think of anything, you're like, oh, I'm just suffering from writer's block, it'll come to me. But that's not really something you should do, because you should just write anyways. Just figure it out, just do it. I write whatever I can, because otherwise I will never finish. How do you go about structuring a book? Do you plan it all out in detail, or does it come more as you go along? Like I said before, I do like to outline. I like to have some direction of where I'm going, otherwise I might just veer off into a totally different place and never come back. Which sometimes is okay, but most of the time is not. For me, I just end up dragging on, and then I don't even know where I am, and it's just not good. But it is fun and exciting to write as I go along and just kind of go with the random ideas that I have and be like, well, I was supposed to go this direction, but I think I'm gonna try going this direction and see how that goes. But it really just depends on the person and the writer and what you're doing, what you're writing. It's all a big adventure. What was your inspiration for the book, and how do you find inspiration to even write? My inspiration for this book was my love of everything fantasy and sci-fi and weird. It's actually kind of funny how this story came about because it wasn't this at all when I started. When I started, I actually was writing several different stories. I started writing this one story about elves, and I thought it was really cool, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I started writing this story about witches and wizards, and I was really into it, but I was like, this kind of sounds like Harry Potter. I don't want to do that. So I kind of tossed that aside. And I just kept doing this. I kept writing all these different fantasy stories. And then at one point I was like, I love all of these things. I can't come up with enough stuff for each one to stand alone. Why don't I just mash them all together and make a book out of it? So that's what I'm doing. It's everything I love about every part of fantasy in one big story. And I think that's gonna be really cool. I'm really excited about it, and it's so much fun. Plus, I can be so creative. I'm building 7 worlds. It's really intimidating and hard, but it's also super fun. What is the hardest thing you face writing a full-length book? I think the hardest thing is filling in the gaps. So like when you write an outline, you know like what the beginning is, what the middle is, what the conflict is, what the resolution is. You know all of those bullet points. But the hardest part is filling in what happens in between. Like, you know, how do you get from point A to point B in an interesting way that isn't super boring and in a way that's realistic? Because generally in a story, not every single event that happens is big and exciting and epic. Like there are small mundane things that have to happen, and you have to figure out how to write them in a way that's not boring and small and mundane. And it's a really hard challenge for me, but I think I've definitely gotten a lot better at it as I've gone along. I'm now almost at the end of my book, and I feel much better about it than when I started. It's now coming a lot more naturally, so I think the best advice is to just write it and push through, and eventually you'll kind of know what to do. How do you stay motivated with so many digital distractions like Netflix, Hulu, video games, social media, etc.? It's hard. I will admit, I am a person who likes to consume a lot of media, and it is really hard. But for me, I've kind of set aside specific times to write, and it works out because these are times when I literally can't do anything else. I would say like 95% of this book was written on the train. So I take the train to work every day. It's about a 45-minute ride. I could watch Netflix on the train, but I do get a lot of like bad signals as I'm going through, and it always has to buffer, and it's really annoying. So I don't really watch anything usually. Before I started writing this book, I was reading a lot, so it's kind of hard because writing this book has definitely hindered my reading, and I've been reading a lot slower, and it sucks because I love to read and I want to read a million things, and I just don't have time because I'm spending all my time writing. But I've kind of gotten into a routine of every day on my commute to and from work, I write. And it's become such a normal habit for me that now I'm just used to it, and I just do it every day. I also, especially during NaNoWriMo, was writing a lot on my lunch break at work, and that's actually worked out pretty well for me because before then I never even really took a lunch break. I very rarely took lunch. I usually just ate lunch at my desk while I was working. But sometimes if I feel like I need a break and I just want to sit down and write, that's when I do it. What is your favorite thing you've ever written? Oh, this is hard. In my book, there's definitely one thing that I'm really excited about. I was writing this story for so long, and I was getting so used to it and so comfortable with it, and it got to a point where I was just not really excited about anything anymore because it had been outlined, it had been structured, it had been in my head for so long that it was just like, this is nothing new, I already knew about this, whatever. And then as I was writing, this idea came to me for a plot line to happen in the story to get from A to B. And I had something that was gonna get me there originally, but I didn't really love it. And then I just thought of this thing, and it was like the first time when I was writing this book that I got legitimately excited. I was like, oh, yes, that'd be so good. And I'm currently in the middle of that plot line right now, and it's very exciting. So I think that's one of my favorite things because it's just like something I didn't really plan that just kind of came to me. And I honestly feel like my characters just gave this thing to me, and they were like, hey, you should do this. I sound like a crazy person, but it's just, you get into weird things when you're writing a book. You're spending a lot of time with these fake fictional characters, and they feel really real to you. It's a really bizarre experience. But outside of this book, there's one thing that I wrote that I'm really proud of, and I'm always kind of embarrassed to show it to people because it's very personal. It's just not something I would generally want to show people, but that's also kind of why I wrote it. And it's a slam poem. It was a slam poem that I wrote in college, I think, and it was kind of supposed to be a challenge because slam poetry is generally a performance, and I'm not someone who likes to perform. And I wanted to write it about social anxiety, and I thought that was kind of ironic to do a performance about social anxiety, like do public speaking about hating public speaking. I thought that was a really cool concept, and I wasn't really sure if I would be able to go through with it and actually perform it. And I technically never did. I never performed it in front of people, but I did perform it in front of a camera, and I made a video about it, and I showed it to everyone, and that was absolutely terrifying. But I did get some really great feedback. It helped a lot of people who did watch it, and I got a lot of emails and things from people who said that it really helped them with their social anxiety. So that was pretty cool. So if you want to watch that, it's in the description of this video. I don't know, I'm really proud of it. And my last question is, what inspired you to write books? Honestly, I've been a writer my whole life. I wrote stories when I was in elementary school. I wrote stories in middle school and in high school. I got really into writing in high school. I joined the creative writing class. I was in like the literary magazine club or whatever. I did as much as I could to write. I really liked it. I wrote screenplays. I wrote some terrible screenplays. I have all of them. I printed them out because I was really proud of them. And I recently found them and I was reading through them and I was like, wow, Steph, what were you doing? This is bad. But I wrote so much. I had so much fun writing. It was like kind of an escape for me. It still is an escape for me. And it's kind of the same reason I like reading books and watching movies and all of that stuff. I like to get out of this world and into a new world. And I write because I want more stories and I want to have control over the stories, and I just have a lot of fun creating things. But honestly, I don't know the real reason. It's just something that I've always done. It's just inherently a part of me to want to tell stories. But that is all of the questions that I received from you guys. Thank you so much for asking such great questions. It was a lot of fun trying to answer them. And let me know if you'd like to see more videos about my book writing process. I would love to talk about it some more and kind of go through the whole process of finishing it and giving it a title and finding an agent and an editor and hopefully eventually publishing it so you can read it. That's my end goal. Thanks so much for watching this video. I am Steph Koza, and I'll see you next time. Bye.